morning, everyone. I'm Bruce Dumont, founder and president of the Museum of Broadcast Communications, and I welcome you back again for yet another election here at the museum. And we're very proud that the museum has been selected many years ago to be the only non-library, non-school site for early voting in the city of Chicago. And since we have a presidential race that's getting quite a bit of news, we expect a tremendous turnout for early voting as well as regular voting in the city of Chicago and county of Cook and state of Illinois. We are also very pleased to continue to work with the team that we've worked with for many years now, and I'm very pleased that Election Board Chairman Marisel Hernandez is with us, as well as County Clerk David Orr, who just told me he's celebrating his 50th election, at least overseeing an election. He was involved in many elections before that, but we welcome them to participate and answer your questions about early voting here at the Museum of Broadcast Communications. And without further ado, let me introduce Election Commissioner, Board Chairman Marisel Hernandez.
Thank you for joining us, David. And before I start, I'd like to thank Bruce Dumont and this wonderful museum, which has been a great and, if I may add, entertaining site for many of our Chicago early voters for many years. Thank you. We've had our Chicago Election Board Annex, the Loop Super site at 15 West Washington Street, for a couple of weeks. But now we're at the start of the traditional early voting period, 2 weeks before Election Day. Early voting and registration are now up and running in every Chicago ward and the downtown super site at 15 West Washington. As you know, Chicago has 51 sites for early voting and registration. All of our sites are open Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Sundays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you want to beat the lines, come on Sundays. Those historically are our least busiest days. But regardless of the days, if you need registration services, any voting and registration site will be better than waiting on Election Day. If you have to register for the first time, or you need to change your address or do a name change, early voting and registration is the way to go. You pick whichever one of the 51 sites that you want to use, and you register and cast your ballot at the same time. By contrast, if you wait until Election Day, you can only register and vote at your designated home precinct. New this year is that all of the Chicago early voting and registration sites will be open Sundays. Also new this year, starting next Monday, October 31st, all of Chicago's early voting and registration sites will be open on weekdays until 7 p.m., all the way through November 7th, Monday before Election Day. Already through Sunday, we've had many people use early voting in the city of Chicago, and we've had about 72,000 apply for vote by mail ballots, and that's an extremely impressive start with the traditional 15-day schedule still to go. We have had more than 260,000 early voters in 2008 and more than 240,000 in 2012. And with the 51 sites we have now, including the new Loop Super site, the longer hours, and our calendar, we hope that this will match or exceed the 2008 and 2012 records we set. Now, historically, more voters are using early voting and registration during presidential elections than throughout any other election cycle. And I think the reasons are simple. Early voting and registration is much more convenient. Chicago voters can use any city site, and suburban voters can use any suburban site in their jurisdiction. Secondly, people don't want to worry about a scheduling conflict on Election Day. Third, most people have their minds set up by mid-October on who they're going to vote for. And fourth, and most importantly, turnouts are typically highest in presidential elections. Now, I'd like to drive something home, and we need your help. We say early voting and registration together because now we need people to associate these two acts. They used to be entirely separate events where you would register to vote 30 days or more before Election Day and then vote. But now with early voting and registration, it's all done together. We want the people who need to register and vote to get it done now before Election Day when it's on their terms. Now, if you need to register, you'll need 2 forms of ID, at least one of which shows your name and current address. And we encourage anyone who has questions to go online at chicagoelections.com or call us at 312-269-7900. And now I'll turn it over to David.
Who would have thought that, looking back to '08, when we had a candidate from Chicago, a candidate to be the first African-American president of the country, that we might have greater interest 8 years later in 2016. We can't say for sure, but there's no question there's extraordinarily high interest in this election. We see it all across the board. We see that we're breaking records in the number of people registered to vote. We've passed the 1.5 million mark. I believe the city of Chicago has as well. Okay, that's over 3 million people in the county of Cook. That's a record. Also, we're seeing great interest in registering online. We've already had 95,000 voters register online. That's one of the new techniques, bring us into the modern world using that technology. 95,000 since the primary, 56,000 since September 1st, and over 15,000 this weekend alone. It was the last weekend you could do online voting. There's kind of a competition to see which will be higher this year. Early voting, like we're seeing today, or voting by mail. Both of those, there's a great deal of interest. First, early voting. As you know, early voting today opens at all these various sites. In suburban Cook, 52 sites downtown, plus the best places we can find in suburban areas. Now remember, the reason we do this, of course, is because we're one of the few countries in the world that vote on a workday. So we introduced and passed early voting years ago to give people options, and of course years later we added mail voting, so people have those 3 options. Any questions on this or to get information, go to cookcountyclerk.com/early voting for information. Okay. Now quickly on voting by mail. We are expecting that we will triple the number of people voting by mail since 2008. We believe we will double the number since 2012. So we're expecting about 100,000 people in suburban Cook to decide to vote by mail. Okay? Now it's really important because if you want to do that, remember, you can also apply for your mail ballot online. Also, the last date for doing that is Thursday, November 3rd. Please don't wait, because once we get your application, we have to prepare all the documents, mail the ballot to you. You have to get it back postmarked on Election Day, November 8th. So if you're thinking about that, a lot of people want to make sure they're getting their ballot. They have time to do it. It needs to be postmarked by Election Day, November 8th. By the way, since March, about 80% of the voters who wanted to apply for mail ballot did so online. These are very helpful to our efficiencies for the future. A few tips, tips for voting, for privacy, for protections. Number 1, you can take in a cheat sheet. You can take in information into the polling place, either for early voting on Election Day. We all know it's a long ballot. Okay, many people on that ballot. Citizens often are frustrated by the number of judges who they don't know they are. You can take something in there. Now, we don't want you to wear a Trump hat or a Clinton hat, but you can take information into the privacy of the polling booth if you need that help. I don't know of anybody that knows all these judges, so don't be embarrassed if you need to do that. You can ask for help. If you see a problem, you got a question, ask one of the judges for help. Take your time. Okay, it's a long ballot. And remember, you've got the right to skip. I certainly encourage people to vote for everything they feel like they know about, but if you skip any of the races, the rest of your votes will count. There's no punishment for skipping races. Everybody in suburban Cook, and I think it's the same in the city of Chicago, will be receiving a mailer. Most of them already arrived, telling you where your polling place is and also where your closest early voting site is. That should all be there. And finally, because citizens really want to know, they don't want to be fooled when they vote. If you want to see your virtual ballot, go on cookcountyclerk.com and you can see the kinds of things you'll be voting for. That's very important to people. We also have an internet voters guide that you can see what the candidates say about themselves. Election judges, which is always usually an enormous challenge for us to get enough. I think we're doing very well there, but we always want to have an extra pool of judges. Just a quick word about security. I mentioned before the heightened interest, a lot of charges going around. Only a couple quick words. First of all, the best way to deal with the notion of a rigged election is to remember that nearly all of the Republican secretaries of states, Republican county clerks, Democratic secretaries of states, Democratic county clerks, they pretty much all agree that those charges are false. Okay, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be concerned about security. We definitely are. For example, we're working very closely with Homeland Security, with the FBI. They can help us with risk assessments, which is very important. So we're constantly monitoring because we're aware of the climate out there. We also do forensic testing. Forensic testing is a tool to try and determine whether or not any malicious software might have been introduced into your equipment. And that's something that we think has worked very well. We also do all these audits. Okay, so we can track everything. We also have a paper record of all the votes in case we had to recreate it. And finally, remember, we have Democrat and Republican judges every step of the way. So those people who worry about perhaps their mail ballot, okay? We have people in process watching the process to make sure everything's fine. So we are going to be very, very careful. We're going to be highly alert. But I don't think anyone should be, like I said, overly concerned. We think we're on top of those things. We think it'll be a good election, and your votes will count. Thank you. Now, any questions for either one of us?